Hello, everybody. I'm here with Kathleen Cauley. She is in private practice in Falls Church, Virginia. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist in Florida, Virginia, and the District of Columbia. She joined the faculty of the Bowen Center in 2012 and serves as the chair of outreach. She's published two book chapters, Triangles in Step Families and Bringing 65 Years of Cutoff Bridging 65 Years of Cutoff. Her volunteer work has included participation on boards dealing with sex abuse scandals of the Catholic Church, the Jesuit Maryland Province Review Board, and the Arlington Diocese Advisory Board. Ms. Cauley is a volunteer of the Southeastern Guide Dogs, Inc. for over 30 years. That's so cool, Kathleen. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. That's my favorite thing. And they've just changed their names to Dogs Incorporated, but it's my literally my favorite place on earth.
Working with the guide dogs?
Yes.
Is
Yes.
that a hard process to get a guide dog up and running?
Well, it's an expensive process that is, funded with donations, but the
Mm.
person who gets the dog doesn't pay anything.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. They're in Florida. They're over in Palmetto on the east coast of Florida. It's a huge campus. It's a wonderful, wonderful place. And, it's interesting to think about Bowen theory while involved with the whole process of becoming a person who has a dog. Because people don't come to it quickly, they come in their own time. They're visually impaired, they're not always ready to take the step of getting a dog.
Hmm.
But when they do, they go live at the guide dog school for 28 days.
Mm.
And I guess we're talking about dogs, so I'll keep going here. Is that
Yeah, yeah, go. I think it's so interesting. Yeah.
well, it's interesting in the family that they come from. They have had an adaptation in their health, and loss of sight, of course, is a big deal. And how that manifests itself in the family relationships is what I've always been interested in. You can have a partner who really doesn't mind or enjoys being leaned on and helpful and can guide the person out into the world when needed. But then you can have other people who've had a lot more independence in their relationship. And so it's more of an adjustment to have the partner leaning in. So then comes the decision to get a dog.
Mm.
People go live at the school alone, not with their partner, and they're
Wow.
there for 28 days on the campus, and they learn everything there is to learn, and they get matched with these most beautiful dogs, these smart, beautiful, sensitive beings. And many, if not most, are stunned that they didn't do it sooner, but you can't do it sooner if you're not ready. And so they
Yeah.
get this beautiful match and they spend time there. They're with other people who are also getting matched with a dog. And then they go home and the school follows them, for all kinds of helpful reasons. But it's an interesting dynamic when they go home to a person who maybe is now very freed up and delighted that this dog will guide their partner out into the world. And this one also gets their independence back.
Mm.
But there are others where it's more of an adjustment because they've enjoyed the togetherness of being more together, I would say. And now
Yeah.
the person gets really, these dogs are very smart. And people are shocked at how quickly they trust this dog to know, guide them when they can't see. So it's really
Mm.
quite beautiful. There's a lot of crying that goes on at these graduations. Oh, it's just, and then the people who raise the puppy, before the dog goes to the school for training, they go to puppy homes, puppy raising,
Uh-huh.
and they're out in the world and they teach them noise and hospitals and being around children and going on airplanes and navigating
Mm.
many, many things. Then the dog has the training at the school. Then they have the match with the person who is blind. And at some point in that process, the person matched with the dog meets the person or the family who raised the dog as a puppy.
Oh,
That's where the crying comes in. It's exciting.
oh, that is very exciting and emotional.
Yeah.
You,
Yes.
wow.
Yes. Dogs are lots of emotional dogs and lots of smart capacity in dogs.
Yeah, and smart capacity and that I don't know, it's like an emotional sensitivity to what's going on too,
Mhm. And
you
trust,
know.
as I did a lot of volunteering with the dogs from the school. And so I would be the handler. And this particular dog, his name was Spirit, and he's the last one that we had from the school. He didn't make guide dog status because all he wanted was to be touched. And so he was a fantastic pet therapy dog. And I realized a couple of years, really, he lived to be 12 and a half. I realized that he was trained, as you just said, for situational awareness and to know
Mm,
where to go and how to navigate. Think of leading a person who's blind. Uh,
hmm.
and I suddenly, one day, I said, "You're not letting him do his job. He's trained for this. And you're interfering. You're telling him when to leave and telling him when to stay." So it was an effort at differentiation of self to just be the handler and let him
Mm.
guide me in any situation for pet therapy that we were involved in. And it changed everything, Guillermo. Everything
Huh.
in terms of my own awareness of managing self in an emotional environment. He went to hospice a lot in that environment. And
Mm.
once I let him think for himself at whatever level that occurs, he would go to person A for whatever reason. He would go to person A, and about a minute into that person petting him, they'd say, "You know, my mother just died, Spirit." And their mother had just died in the room. So once I let him work his magic and trusted him, I learned a lot about the whole process of being a hand
Mm.
dog. They're amazing.
That is fascinating that he had this sense awareness of what had been going on, where he needed to go, uh, and this idea of letting him do his thing. It sounds like that went on also like in the couple, this partner that has this challenge comes home with a dog, and how do you let him? How does the other partner let him be? And
There's so much variation. There's a lot of variation and different levels of
yeah,
maturity. Yeah.
it's so interesting that the relationship always comes into play, you know. And like you said, they sometimes they can be used to the closeness and then feel like, hey, maybe I want it back,
Yes. Yes.
or enjoy the independence, or it's it all revolves around relationships. I'm always fascinated by that, you
Well, and
know.
I think there's been a lot of discussion about animals in the family and do they play a part
What do
in
you
the
think about that? I think they do. Those little buggers.
go first. You go first, and then I'll tell you what I think.
Oh, well, I just think they really are part of the emotional process. You can see it sometimes if, I mean, you gave a great example of the dog going to somebody and getting petted, and it's a regulatory process. The person's regulating, dog's helping the person regulate their anxiety. You know, if a couple has tension, maybe one of them goes to the dog and pets it, and it becomes part of the emotional regulation process of the family, of the relationship, of the system. Um, and then and when they're gone, when you lose them, I think that's when you can see it a lot too. You know, not just the fact that people grieve, but that it can change the way people interact too.
Yeah. The absence. Yeah, it's big. The absence is big. You know,
So what do you think?
well, I for many years I had a dog at work for me almost all the time, really. I had three different dogs from the guide dogs school, and so it was part of their training to keep them in good habits. And so they would come into the office and say hello to the person or the couple, and then just lay quietly for the whole time. And then at the end, when I closed the family diagram, that was always the signal that they could say goodbye. And and they kept the rules. They kept the rules because again, if the handler or any person who has a dog in their office is clear about, okay,
The rules.
yeah, they're not there to play. People are there to think. Um, but there were a few times that they broke the rule. They call it intelligent disobedience at the school. How does a dog know when not to? Let's say a person says go forward and the dog sees an obstacle there and the dog's going to.
Mm.
One time this couple they came in with a heightened tension around an issue and they figured it out and the tension between them lowered. And I had a dog named Zipper, uh, and he all of a sudden he was walking past me. He broke his stay, walking past me, and he gave me this look like someone has to take charge here. And he went over and celebrated with them. He was one of those dogs that would smile. He went over
Hmm.
one to the other and literally was in their little pack that they had somehow the tension had gone down and he was making some kind of a statement. Um,
Mm.
so it was rare that that would happen. And I would let it happen. I'd ask the family, "Is that are you all right with whatever he's about to do here?" So it was an interesting that he rarely did, and then the few times that he would. There was a woman one other time that was crying, quietly crying, and he did the same thing. He went over and started to put his paws around her shoulder. I said, "Are you all right?" "Yes." She said, "I'm fine." And she said, "This is just what I need." But those were the
Mm.
only, really the only two times that he did that. And the third thing I remember about him, he was the father of 68 guide dogs for the blind. He was a big yellow lab. He was the smartest dog we've ever had.
Mm.
There was a 2-year period when my husband was up here on a detail in Washington with the government, and I was in Tampa, so we were commuting back and forth. And my husband went to the guide dog people and said, "What am I going to do about Zipper? He is so attached. We have this incredible bond." And they looked at him and said, "It's only the closest treat." And he came home and said, "Okay, they're telling me it's going to be all right." So he'd go back and forth and he would come home. Mac would come home and Zipper would be like Velcro on him the whole weekend he was home. And then every time on Sunday, I would drive my husband to the airport and Zipper would sit in the front seat well. And
Mm.
my husband would get out of the car, go into the airport, and Zipper would follow him vigilantly until you couldn't see him anymore. And then he would turn his head, put his hand on my shoulder, look forward like, "I got you covered, ma'am, let's go." And it was a view into triangles like I had never seen before. That truly, it is kind of the nearest treat, who's feeding, who's walking. And it would repeat every time, every weekend that he was home, it would repeat.
That's fascinating.
They
I,
do, back to the original question, they play a very active part and they are active players in the family emotional system. They're not passive. They're not an item. You know how people
Mhm.
used about, well, can we be in a triangle with alcohol or can we be in a triangle with gambling? With animals, the answer is yes, because they participate. They are in the process,
Mm.
moving toward one or the other, making themselves known, signaling many, many
Mm.
things.
Yeah, I love that distinction that it's not an object. They're participatory in whatever's going on, you know. That's great. I love this idea of intelligent disob. How often do you use intelligent disobedience?
Me or the dog?
You.
Wow, the dogs have taught me a lot about being able to do it.
It's a great concept. This idea of How do you know when to just kind of stick to your own thinking, you know, regardless of what is going on around you, and the pressure to be the way others want you to be? How do you stick to your own thinking and be intelligently disobedient?
Well, isn't there a parallel there?
Uh, so
Differentiation
it's
of self. These dogs are onto something. Differentiation of self. I have a way I believe is right. You have a way you think is right. I'm
hmm
going to try my way, and I'm going to let you know. There's a checking in
mm,
piece of it. I'm going to let you know. I'm about to do this here. It's interesting.
mm,
I'll have to think more about that. Yeah, I think that's very interesting.
yeah. It's when we're talking about dogs, it's almost in this or maybe it's not emotional sensitivity, a tuned inness. Um, I think of into human intuition, and I have this ongoing question with the connection between differentiation, defining one's self, and intuition.
Ooh. Tell me your thoughts.
My hunch is, or my hypothesis is that the more you increase your capacity to differentiate, distinguish between your thinking and feeling system and have more choice, the more you can tune into your intuition and trust it.
I would buy that. And the reciprocal part of that, the more you trust it, the more you can do it.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. I don't know. I
Well, it's
uh,
complicated. This whole idea of differentiation of self, it's beautiful and it's complicated, and then it's simple, and then it's never simple.
it's
And it's
it
always
slips out of your hands.
does, and it's so intriguing. It never gets boring to think about, like you just said. Or we just talked about intelligent disobedience in a dog and differentiation of self. I've always thought these animals that are trained to be helpers to people who are disabled have a higher level of, what would you call it? Maturity, differentiation of self. I don't know. They're pretty darn smart.
Yes, they are. Yep. So, Kathleen, how did you tell me a little bit about kind of your journey, your growing up and your family, and then how you came to this field in general of psychology.
Well, I grew up in northern Minnesota, Duluth, Minnesota, way up near the Canadian border. Um,
What?
and I stayed there till high school. So
Mm,
uh, I was from a family of four children, and we were a family there without extended family in the area. So on my dad's side, his were in New York. On my mom's side, hers were in Milwaukee. And I was thinking the other day, as I was thinking about talking with you, that friends were very important there. My parents had this very rich group of friends connected
mm,
to their church, but also connected to their neighborhoods. And we had every holiday with this group of friends. They all had children. Our family was small compared, many of them had, 6, 7, 8 children. Uh,
hmm
and I was thinking the other day that everybody in my family, all my siblings, have many long-standing friendships with people from grade school, high school, college.
Ah,
Everybody does. And in the next generation, I'm noticing so do they. And
mm,
I just was appreciating that the other day, that I think that had roots in Minnesota, actually. Um, and then I moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Um, my dad was with US Steel, and so we were transferred there. And my parents said, "This is going to be so great for all of you." I still remember eating my chicken noodle soup thinking, this is terrible for me. It was in the eighth grade. This is terrible. What do you mean? And I just kept eating my soup. And boy, it was really a wonderful move, but it was devastating at the time. But the emotional process in the family was, we're good, we're fine. Everything's always
mm,
fine. So you kind of skip over transition. You think you're going to miss your friends. You think you might be sad here. Oh, you seem kind of sad when you come home from high school. Are you all right? No, that it was like, isn't this great? So,
Like pushing you into happiness,
oh my. And I'm always trying to regulate it down because so much of that in my family, this kind of overly,
Mm,
and I'm not saying it was problematic, but it had its challenges. This over
mhm,
people will say, yeah, but I came from an overly negative family. So they would rather be in a father knows best family. I'm like, oh, be careful what you ask for. Because I think people go out into the world with this unrealistic, overly positive view and have to learn lessons along the
mm,
way. It's an interesting part of family life, I think it is. So, that
yeah.
was I was the third in that family. We had four children. Um, and I had two brothers. I had an older sister, two miscarriages after her, and then this pod of brother, me, brother.
Mm,
Um, and I'll say more later about it. The one brother ended up dying in high school, my older brother. But at the
oh,
time in Duluth, we were all still alive, and I was the dedicated religious vocation. The target was on me. She's the one.
ah,
And my father
you
was involved in what was called the Sarah Club. Father Junipero Sarah was about vocations, and
mhm.
families then were kind of expected to bring a priest along or a nun along. So my father confirmed years later, yeah, it was you. We just thought it would be you. Well, I didn't necessarily think it would be me, but they bought me a nun's habit when I was 10. I love this habit. And my mother made it. I said, it's not quite like the Dominicans who taught us at school. So she made it so that it was. She made the sleeves bigger and the collar, and she bought me the rosary and the belt and the veil. And I walked around the neighborhood in this habit. Now, you can only imagine, what do two brothers do with a sister who's doing this? Walking around on windy days, I'd say, "Oh, it's windy out. I have to get my veil." And I'd go walk through the neighborhood like this was okay. This was kind of strange. I mean, think about
Mm,
it, Guillermo. It was a little strange. So then I didn't really think about being a nun, but I loved the convent and I loved going over there. It was quiet there in Duluth.
mm.
So then we moved to Pittsburgh and I thought, well, maybe I have a vocation. Maybe there's something to this. Maybe I should enter the convent.
How old were you when you moved to Pittsburgh?
14.
Okay.
I was a freshman in high school. And in my sophomore year, I went to see the principal of the high school. And I said, how do you know if you have a vocation? And she said a very unhelpful thing. She said, she's probably dead now. God rest her soul. She said, you just know. And I remember walking out of there thinking, that didn't help me at all. There's no discerning here. Can we talk about this? So I thought, well, I guess I don't.
Mm,
I don't just know. And then the following year, all the nuns came out of their habits. I don't know if you remember this. It was around Vatican.
mm,
And they came to school and their hair looked strange and their outfits, they were messing with their clothes and trying to dress right. And they didn't know how, and their hair was chopped. It was awful. And what do
mm,
high school girls, this was a girls' Catholic school, what do high school girls do? They can be mean girls, making fun of the nuns. And I remember thinking, this isn't right. These nuns need help here, and you're gossiping about them. But when they came
mm.
out of that habit, I never wanted to be a nun again.
You like the habit then?
I think so. I think so. And it was much more a call from the family. People,
Mm,
patients will often say it's a call from God, but it's a call from the family too. How come
mm,
this one is? So yeah, I never really thought about it again, but I kept in my work all the way through, I have kept the theme of vocation. I've worked with a
Mm,
lot of clergy. I was in Roberta Gilbert's seminar as faculty for many, many years. Mostly clergy came through that seminar. And so it's like I kept the journey of the path of vocation in my work that kind of was the call from the family and then from me as well as time went on. So that
mm.
I was thinking about that. That's a long thing I've been thinking about since you asked me.
Yeah. It's so interesting, this idea that the family can invite you into a position like that in some way, in implicitly or explicitly, you know. I I it's I wonder if seeing them remove the habit gave you space to see it differently too, you know. If it was like a serendipitous moment there,
Yeah,
freed you up.
I look back at that and I think the family also was trained to think of me as not having children, of not marrying.
Oh.
Um, once you decide that, oh, she might enter the convent, what happens in the family? There's a nun and a priest coming
Mm,
down all the generations. I have a grandfather that was left at Notre Dame and raised by the priest there from the time he was, a boy. And so then what happens in the family to the thinking about that person? So there was this, the nuns came out of their habits, but then when we moved to Pittsburgh, a few years later, my brother died in this car wreck right after he got out of high school, right before he was going to Notre Dame. And so then the resources in a family also shift.
hmm
So he's now gone as an uncle to the unit eventually. My mother's death followed his about 2 years later from colon cancer. She died. So she was 49. So then she was the grandmother who was now absent
hmm
for the future. There were no grandchildren yet, but it was a massive shift in the family unit and
mm,
a unit where people liked to be fine all the time. It was bad and it was very, very challenging, but we, didn't know what to do with it really until years later,
mm.
all of us engaged it to one degree or another in terms of talking about it, et cetera. And so,
Yeah.
in terms of the vocation, I think there was then in all of our families, there can be also a call from the family unit when resources are less. Um, and again, I then was the aunt, not the nun, but I didn't marry till I was
Mm,
35. And I was the aunt who stepped in some and went and stayed sometimes when my brother was out of town, stayed with his kids. So there was over time into my single years and on into before I got married, this availability to the unit that an aunt slash nun who doesn't
hmm
have kids could fill. So theory gives you a broad view of these are decisions we all think that we're making on our own, but we're not.
hmm
It's this whole backdrop of the family and how much are we responding to the needs of the group from an evolutionary standpoint, the
mm.
all there for resources. Who's going to
Yeah.
come in?
Yeah, so it's not that the family's calling you in the sense of, hey, this is your position. It's there's a need, there's a space to be filled, and kind of that shapes the way we step into the family too.
What do you think? What do you think about that?
Uh, I I think it makes sense to me. It's been my experience. It's been what I've observed in working with clients, you know, that these are kind of pressures that shape us. And
Yes. Yeah.
uh, and then it just becomes a question of, well, are we attending, are we moving in them automatically or thoughtfully?
Well, and maybe we should take this to the clinical setting or
Sure.
people who are pastors or coaches. Um, parents, this automaticness that you're talking about, the position that we're in the family, how does that show up automatically for a clinician in the office? Like these brothers that I'm talking about, they formed my personality. And even long at years after my older brother died, I thought and thought and thought about this idea of if you have a middle child, people will say, Guillermo, I'm a middle child. And if Guillermo says, well, do you think you're more the younger sister to that older brother or the older sister to that younger brother? People will always answer that. Oh, much more. And it's very, very interesting. And I was clearly the younger sister to that older brother.
Mm,
Uh, and as the years went on, I was still able to learn about that position by the automaticness of how I could hand things over. I had an older brother and sister, so if I was in a parking lot, I didn't have to think about where the car was when I got back there.
mm,
And how automatic we take into our life or work. With couples, it was probably some of the major work I had to do. This position, being between these brothers, doing many things with them, skiing and golfing, and if I wanted to be part of the pack, I went with them. And so I would get in the clinical setting before I knew about Bowen theory, and I would side with the guys. So they would come in, and the woman might look very reactive, and the guy would look at me like, look at this.
eh,
Know what I'm living with here. And I would think to myself, yeah, I think you're right. Now that's terrible. That's that is so not neutral. So I got to Bowen Theory, I went to coaching all the time with my clinical people. And I worked and worked and worked and worked to get neutral about how automatic it was. And to the point where then I was able to say, let's say a couple came in, same thing, the guy's like a, and I could say to him, what is she up against in living with you? He'd say, me? What are you talking about me? What? And she would like, calm down right away. And so I could see in the triangle with a clinician, I could see the reciprocal nature of how they thought about one another in that process between them, but how automatic the coach can get into that triangle if they're not careful with in very subtle
mm,
ways with a look or a siding or yeah, I know. I mean, it is very, very important to, for me, it was to have a coach all the time because I was getting caught all the time. You know, it took me a long
mm,
while to sit in my office and be able to ask that next question with neutrality because
mm.
I didn't have it. I didn't have the neutrality on many, many issues in the family that I would look at in coaching for myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think this idea that the therapist's responses are shaped by kind of their family position, their family, their in the experience they had growing up. You know, maybe if people always ask, what should I ask my therapist? You should ask them if they have a therapist.
Yeah, that's right.
Um, yeah, but I think I teach in the counseling department. I think so much of therapy is the therapist managing their own reactivity in exactly the way you're describing because it's so subtle the way it comes up and catches you and yeah, it's I find it fascinating.
Well, it always makes me wonder if people are not looking at the family. Well, I was one of them. I had three different supervisors before I came to Bowen Theory. And there was a woman who had trained at the Georgetown Family Center. Um, and she was also, by the way, a Catholic nun. And
Mm,
I would walk past her office and people came out of there. They looked very like it was life-giving what had happened in there. And I was getting ready to leave the profession. I mean, I had some very serious supervisors I wasn't looking at the extended family. And I would run out of options as a counselor. I would get to the fourth session.
Hmm.
What do I do now? And I went to her, her name was Teresa, and I said, would you be my supervisor? This was at Catholic Charities where I worked for 15 years. And she said, if you'll look at your family, I will be your.
Mm.
Well, that was how I got to bone theory through her. And
Oh, interesting.
and that's how I started looking at myself and the extended family.
Mm. And that when you started looking at yourself and your family, that's when things changed for you.
Yes. The
Mm.
options, how I thought sitting in that clinical room. And then I had the problem of having to rein myself in with all these light bulbs that now were going off. The therapist coach can get way too curious. And
Mm.
thank you earlier before we got on here. I've been thinking a lot about that lately, that the curious
Yeah.
question is something that uh, theory talks about, and that once we get neutral, we're able to ask that good, curious question. But
Hmm.
people get enamored with this curiosity sometimes in the beginning, and they ask too many curious,
Mm.
kind of an anxious peppering of questions. Um, just something to be careful about as I see it.
Mm. So you can get it. The maybe the reactivity of the therapist could be to be can get managed by asking too many questions at once. Is that what you're saying?
Too many at once, or a person learning who's a student of the theory can be all excited about this theory, and they can go home with their notes and ask their father too many questions, or their mother, or their sibling. What about
Mm.
families like, whoa, what's going on? What's going on here? So again, that's part of regulating that down, that kind of anxious talking or
Mm.
rapid talking, or all the things that I think I've worked on for years and I'm still working on. In this interview,
Yeah.
I'm working on it.
I, I don't think we stop, you know.
Yeah,
I think we're always working on it.
that's right.
Uh, oh,
What do your students say though about that? When you
uh,
say that to them,
I, I think they take to the idea. I think for most of my students, maybe all of them, it's intuitive that you need to manage yourself as a therapist, you know. And I think the attraction is it also gives you something to work on, you know. It's not always about fixing somebody else. If I can manage myself, that's useful to the other person.
you're doing a good service there, getting into
Well,
the schools with these ideas.
yeah. Well, I'm trying. Um, I was curious. Well, first, how did you go from being a nun, a potential nun, to um, stumbling into psychology?
Well, I think the first time I really thought about this, my mother was very curious.
Mm.
She was the youngest of five and very adored in her family and by her friends. She was really quite fun, died young. It was a very, very big loss for the energy of the family when she died and the extended family. She was just someone that people were drawn to. And so I when she died and when my brother died, I saw this family of mine not so sure what to do, as I said earlier. And I think I
Hmm.
got very curious. She was a person that was curious if you'd go out to a restaurant and she'd say, oh, see that family over there? Here's what I think might be going on. What do you think, Kathleen? So she had this kind of natural curiosity about people. She liked people a lot. And then when she was gone, I think I really missed that about her, that lighthearted curiosity that she had. And so I think I kind of picked up on some of that. And I would watch my family not knowing how to talk about this brother who had died.
Mm,
And I would think there has to be families out there that know more than we know about how to deal with these difficult challenges that come their way. Um, so I think I got interested in the nature of the family. But then
mm,
I went into psychology in college. I went to school out in the Midwest and I was at St. Mary's across the street from Notre Dame. We could take
hmm
electives at Notre Dame. And I took an elective in abnormal psychology.
mm.
I got a D. I got a D in the class. I was an AB student my whole life. It's the only D I ever got. It's the best D I ever got because it's all about diagnosing people. And I couldn't do it. My brain wouldn't go there. I couldn't think about diagnosing this person. And so I saw the D and I said, you're in the wrong field. You can't be a psychology major. And I switched to sociology, which was
Mm,
much broader in perspective and just made more sense to me. And it was the bigger picture.
mm. But then you became a licensed psychologist at one point, right?
Well, the state of Pennsylvania allowed people that I had a master's in counseling education, and they
Ah,
allowed
okay.
me to test for the psychology license. Don't ask me why. So
Interesting.
it was my license by legal being licensed, but it was not the field that I was in. And then when I
Got
moved to
it. Got
Florida,
it.
it was marriage and family, and they had a marriage and family therapy exam down there.
Uh,
So
Beautiful. So it was always the family that was that kind of drew you, interest you.
absolutely. Yeah.
Uh, that's fascinating. Uh,
It
yeah, I think,
still does, Guillermo.
I think for me too, I was just thinking, I think thinking about my own family, thinking about other people's families, what shapes, how the family shapes people. I think that's always been interesting to me.
From the time you were young, you're still young. Sorry. The time you were young?
I think it's a great question. I think when I was young, I was observant of people
Hmm.
and relationships. And I think that has to do with being the youngest and sitting back and being just watching how people move in general
Okay.
as a way to figure out what I was going to do. You know, the negative part of that is I could be passive, have had passive moments in my life, but I think the positive part is it it gave me pretty good intel on what was going on with people.
I think that's right. And if you have older siblings, you can see where they succeed and fail. What works
Hmm
doesn't work. I think that's right. And I think this is reminding me that as a coach in an office, um, we're also vulnerable to how we get pressed into these positions by our clients. So a youngest who maybe has had these older siblings, and if an older brother comes into your office or an older sister into my office, it's easy to get back on your heels as a young therapist, like whoa, or to give over or defer to or not be in the coach's position. Just another advantage of the importance of knowing how did the family press us into these positions in a good way?
mm
How do clients automatically sniff us out? I can tell her what to do. You know,
hmm
I'll get her to do this. I'll get her to side with me.
Uh, it is fascinating how couples will do that. They'll come in, and each one of them, in their own way, is trying to get you on their side.
What do you see? What do you see there? Like
Oh,
as
you gave a great example with the guy just going, like, you see what I'm dealing with?
yeah,
And then sometimes, the wife will have her own way of doing it. Can you believe this narcissist over here?
yeah, giving that diagnosis.
And each of them are in their own way are saying, agree with me that the other one's the problem, you know?
Yeah,
Ha-
it's interesting.
Yeah. What do you find is a way to that um, you've seen in your own practice of getting a couple that's in that mode of seeing the other one as the problem to step out of that a little bit?
Well, I think some of it is even in just the structure of the room. You know, the one of the unique things about Bowen theory is that you speak to the coach. People talk to the coach
Mm. Rather than each other?
rather than each other. And so it cuts down on the emotional process between them. The From an evolutionary standpoint, you know, the if you think of animals staring at each other, they're going to kill each other or fight each other or compete for fairness with each other. So the more we can damper down that primitive side of the human that people like to pretend they don't have, but we all do have, the look that we're talking about. You'll hear couples say, I see that look. I know what that means. You're going to get mad at me now. If the coach can not have them looking at each other, accessing the thinking part of their being, a
Mm.
woman can sit and listen to her partner, or a man can listen to his partner with a little more objectivity because he's not looking at me. I'm not seeing the facial expressions. I'm not seeing the jerking eyebrow, whatever it is that get people reacting. And they can think better and they can watch the other and hear the other with a little more awareness. Oh, this is what he's been trying to tell me.
Mm.
And she might be telling you, or he might be telling you as the coach, but the partner can say, "Oh, this is what he or she's been trying to say here." What do you think about that? Do you have people talk to the coach?
I set it up. I was trained in a similar way. I set it up very much like that, where I have each person talk to me rather than to each other. Try to minimize the that reactivity that you're describing, you know.
Yeah, it helps.
I I think so. You know, it's been my experience. It's helpful. Helps people access their thinking rather than just we get so stuck in the emotional back and forth.
The other thing I've been thinking about lately with couples is how often people will say they have to have a big conversation, or when are we going to sit down and talk? When are we going to sit down and talk with Guillermo? Like, never. Guillermo would say, never. We're not doing that thing you just suggested. So if let's say there's distance in a marriage, uh,
Uh-huh.
and people have built a case in their head, a story about the other, things that are bothering them, resentments that they're holding, uh,
Hmm.
and then they want to have this. When are we going to talk? And and then they wonder why they're partnered. I'm sorry, but it's once people figure this out, it's kind of funny. They're like, "Yeah, you wanted me to sit down and talk about 3 years of things that have been bothering me." So I think that Bowen theory lends this idea of what does it mean to do your part differently
Mm.
with a partner, to say something or bring something up or uh, get more connected or work on your own distance and stay involved. You never have to have a big conversation. If people can take on these patterns, triangles and distance and conflict, and learn how do I do my part just a little bit differently? How do
Mm.
I use the I word rather than you need to do that dishwasher thing. You need to clean that up, empty that up. Well, I better, people don't like to be told what to do at any age. And so
Nope.
you can do just a little part differently. I got home today and I was tired and I saw those dishes and I just didn't feel like unloading them. The partner's like, "Oh, I'll do it." As opposed to, "I got home, I'm tired. Can't you see that I'm tired? And you didn't even empty that dishwasher. What have you been doing all day?" Oh, big difference. And there's so many things that people can do to do their
Mm.
part, and they never have to have a big sit down.
I love that idea of just doing your part a little bit differently in in whatever ways you that comes to you.
Hmm.
Uh, it's so much more hopeful than we need to sit down and have talk for 6 hours for the next 3 days about everything that's been wrong. Do you think that this idea, this notion of we need to have a conversation about it is part of the anxiety in the couple? You know, like,
I think the tension, yeah, I think the tension, because if there's this buildup of issues, things that have not been talked about or dealt with, um, and then it becomes this emotional. People aren't even sure what they're trying to say anymore because it's layer upon layer of
Mm.
things that have maybe bothered them. Now, this also comes out of the family, though. This is not does not come easily to people. If they're in a family where you don't do that very easily, there's a big learning curve for that.
What do you mean by that? Having a conversation?
Well, I often give the example in my own family where, everything was fine.
Mm.
So when I got married, I didn't really know how to stay in these conversations if things were challenging or we had difference of opinion. And so when I was early in my marriage, my, my husband, he came from a big family of nine. His wasn't that much better at doing this, but we figured it out somehow what pattern we could live with. But if it got to a certain point in the discussion and I wanted to back away, like, oh, this is getting too serious here, he would say, now, if we were in your family now, we would probably build a fire and sing a song, right? Oh, now I was able to hear that, Guillermo. I mean, if he had locked down, he was a person that had a lot of levity to him, which I
Yeah.
needed. I just needed that. And if he had locked down, come on, talk more. What's wrong with you? I mean, that what would have happened? Nothing good would have
Mm.
happened to my
Yeah.
ability to do it. And so that would then I would keep going. He would challenge me to say, we really have to talk about money or whatever it was. It was no big deal, but it can seem like an enormous deal when you're afraid of conflict. So these are all the patterns
Absolutely.
you have to work on.
Mm.
I don't have
And
to build
so,
a fire and sing a song anymore. I know how
but you know how to what?
I know how to get mad now.
Oh.
I would have told you in my family. We don't get mad. I would have told you that.
Mm. Mm.
Think about that.
Mm.
I had to learn. Now, this brings me to one other thing. I several years ago, I started realizing, does a coach assume that people sitting in front of them are aware of their own feelings, the layers of emotion? And I just started asking people more. What do you know about yourself, below the neck?
It's a great question.
People would say, well, I know when I'm angry. And I'd say, do you know if you're sad, if you're disappointed, when you're resentful? And I realized there's not often a repertoire to work at differentiation of self if people don't know themselves.
Themselves. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So they can know what they
Mm.
think. But I think we also have to know what we feel. And the theory is often criticized as being unemotional, like, too cerebral or something. But I think it takes a high degree of knowledge of self emotionally to be able to say what one is thinking and believing, and then stay in the presence of the other to hear what they're thinking and not distance. It takes a
Mm.
lot of awareness. And if we don't teach people that at a starting point, it's a foreign language then. It's like, what are you talking about?
Mm.
So I try to always remember what it's like to be back at go with, I did not know my feelings. I'll tell you that. It's not a guy thing at all.
Well, I wasn't particularly good at it either. I'm a work in progress.
So how did you get going with it, would you say?
I think when not acknowledging, not seeing, understanding the different emotional states that would come, feelings, that not acknowledging them wasn't useful. It got me in trouble.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
needed trouble. I needed trouble.
Yeah.
I needed a challenge to see that what wasn't working, and that it's not that I had to give in to the emotions, but to be able to acknowledge when I was angry or upset or disappointed, that there was utility in seeing it and acknowledging it, and being able to let it go. Because if you don't acknowledge it, it's just sitting there in the background and it's influencing you, and you just don't know it.
Yeah, and it's in the atmosphere. I mean, it's amazing that we don't see it until we work on it. Like, let's say person walks in the house and they're in a bad mood, or they think they're getting a little in a funk, or they're down, and they go to their room and they'll say, I don't know why my family is so bothered by. I go to my room. I'm out of their way. I say, but there's a cloud that you brought into the house, and it's in the room with you, and it's seeping out through the door, and they're all aware of the tension in you and now in them, and the animals will show you their ears are going back. Oh, it's hard for people to see that. It really is
Mm.
hard for people to see the contagion of our moods. And the other
Mm.
picks up on it. Is something wrong? Nope. Are you sure? Uh-huh. Oh, it sure doesn't seem that way to me.
Mhm. Mm. And then it's so I'm just thinking of some couples that I know, when there is someone in an that has that atmosphere around them. Uh, Not it affects everybody. Um, but then the question is, as the other person, how do I manage myself in it? Because the automatic thing is to try to get them to get mad at him, or to get him to feel better, or to do some version of we'll stop it, you know?
Yeah, stop it so I'll feel better. Right, right.
Exactly. But
Well,
that
and I think there's different parts. I think people
that
can,
never works.
no, no. But you're right. People don't want it on them. So what would a different part look like there?
Mm.
Partner might say, I'm okay. I'm okay with some space here. Um, let me know when it's time to talk without
Mm.
staying in there and come on, you feel better. I'll make you a sandwich.
Yeah.
Oh, and
I'm
if
here
people,
here if you want to talk.
yeah. And if people can learn to say, I need a little space here, don't take it personally, you know, that helps too. And this one isn't having to coax them out of it. Um,
Mm.
it's such an important part of togetherness, whether it's college roommates living in an apartment in a fraternity, or couples in relationships as they get older. It's contagious. It's catching.
Mm.
Again,
Ain't
back
that
to
the
the
truth?
animals. The animals will tell you right away what's going on. Follow the animals. Where are they in the house? What are their ears doing? What's signal? We're in a world of heightened reactivity, and I think
Oof.
everybody's got this fear, uncertainty, safety thing that they're trying to keep a lid on. And
Mm.
I find a lot of people now are saying, I try to get in these conversations that are somewhat civil and neutral, and then I sound reactive right away. So I think it's a way to look at this, is that people are trying their best. Um, I have a little rescue dog. She's the first rescue dog that I've had, and her nervous system was a wreck when we got her. She was from Puerto Rico, and she had been abused there, and she's would shake and run, and I thought, "Oh, this is so good for me." I mean, I was used to these Labradors that were predictable every time of the day what they were going to do, and she has been a teacher for me. So when the world
Mm.
heightened up, um, I said to her in this second round of this administration, I said, I promise you, You've come a long way in your nervous system. I'm not going to raise my voice in this house about politics. And she's my beacon because as soon as I do, if I break that, she gets back in her what
Mm,
any heightened voice. She's a teacher. I mean, it's a reciprocal.
uh,
Okay, Grace, sorry.
yeah. Well, relationships are great teachers, that's for sure. Yeah. Kathleen, do you mind if we pause for 1 second?
Oh, please.
Okay, we're back. Kathleen, did you know I have family in Puerto Rico?
No.
Yeah. My dad's side of the family went from Cuba to Puerto Rico, so a lot of I still have some uncles and cousins that stayed that they grew up there, so they lived there, and then some came to Miami.
Do you go there? Do you go down there?
I haven't been in a while. I'd love to go back and stay for a bit, but it's beautiful down there.
You
It's
hear that?
yeah.
Yeah.
Does
She's
she
listening.
does she speak does she speak Spanish?
Well, I did wonder when she came. I wondered if she did. We didn't, but when we had a man that was working on things here at the house for a while, and she was paying quite a bit of attention when he would speak. I'm sure she had to be around Spanish speaking people in Puerto Rico.
I would imagine, you know. So we were talking about kind of learning about oneself in relationships. That they're a great kind of what do you call it? They're a great system, I guess, to a microscope to look at yourself. They bring everything to the surface. Uh,
Do
it's
people
just, yeah.
go ahead.
No, I was going to say that I think the trick is how do you get people invested in the idea that looking at yourself is more useful than focusing on what's wrong with the other person.
Well, I think that people will often say, why should I look at my family? How much of this was in their family,
Mm.
blaming others so quickly? Where did it come from? People will say, well, I don't really want to look at my family. I say, well, you don't have to. You can think about it and never go home and do anything about it. But I'm not sure this is for you. But you can decide.
Mm.
But to look at that in the family, how much blaming of others was there? How much criticism of others? How much responsibility for self? Uh, where did they learn this? And to your earlier point, I think we are most reactive in our family, we're most sensitive in our family group. And there's a real value in seeing that in ourselves and then practicing there and
Mm.
work at it in a conversation with a brother or a sister. Um, we're not that sensitive to people at work or other places, but boy, we are in the group. My family, my father, his mother, and there's that chapter that you mentioned on cutoff, was that his mother and her sister had a big fight. We call it the Great Fight of 1941. And they never spoke again, never talked again. These two sisters. So my father, the son of one of them, and his cousin Bert were the sons of these two women who had this 20-year cutoff.
Mm.
So, what did they bring to the table of their families then that they created? So, my father was not a person who criticized us. We went out into the world and had to learn, ooh, it's nasty out here. But that did not happen at home. If there was something to be said, he said, can we have a conversation here? That's not the norm. And so,
Mm-mm.
um, but it came out of that cutoff. And so if we did have any heightened tension or two people were going to start to fight with each other, he'd go, enough, go think about it, come back and we'll talk. But
Mm.
it was a real low tolerance for conflict, probably out of this fear that we're not going to have any kind of cutoff in this family. We stay connected. So again, getting people to think about what do the marriages look like? What do the relationships look like? People have different opinions in their generations. Was there a lot of blame? Did people have to take responsibility? And again, it can be subtle. If you get a very favored man or woman in their family, everybody thinks they're wonderful and adored, and nobody ever criticizes them. They have to learn, hey, I have to get more open here. And that's a big learning curve. I work with a lot of clergy, and many of them were favored in their family and then favored in the congregation.
Hmm.
There can be a lot of chaos going on around them, and they might think, well, this has nothing to do with me. I'll say, oh, it has everything to do with you. Remember, you're the leader of this congregation. And yet, if in their family they were not criticized and the congregation is criticizing, surely it's got to be somebody else's,
Mm.
not mine. So to engage that takes an effort, even to see it. Like, what are you talking? What? What? Everybody likes me. Well, not here in this congregation. What are you going to do? This is foreign territory for you. So it's interesting. It's an interesting part of
Mm.
people come out to the world.
Absolutely. Do you think so one way you'd get couples to start working on their part in it is by asking about their separate their family of origin.
How did it look there? What did
Yeah.
the relationships look like there? What do they see
Mm.
on the diagram? How did
Yeah.
they know to be blaming so much? What happened in their family that they grew up in? Did they watch their parents do that thing, that bicker back and forth thing?
Yeah. How did the family argue?
Yeah,
Deal with conflict.
yeah.
Mm. Interesting. Do you find people take to it when you ask them those types of questions?
Well, honestly, I think that they see the diagram. I think the diagram is such a beautiful unfolding of the facts of their family.
Mm.
And you can see the light bulbs going off like, oh, if couples are getting married, I see couples who are getting married, and I'll say to them, where do you think the triangles will be? And they don't know about triangles. So where do you think you'll be caught between
Mm.
partner and who? They can go, oh, me, my partner, and my brother, me, my partner, and my father, me, my partner, and my mother. They know, boom, that's awareness. And so,
Hmm.
how then can they look at the diagram and just look at how are people in marriages relating to each other? What do they see? Who do they admire? What relationship
Mm.
did they really want to emulate? What are the relationships that they want nothing to do with? And how does the family teach them? So the coach isn't going to teach them, but that diagram will. And
Mm.
if the coach can really believe that the family is the expert on itself, not the coach. So coach has a theory, family has a family. And if the coach can engage whatever pattern that couple are presenting up the diagram, then the magic occurs. Then they see, oh, I grew up with this every day of my life. My parents did this being right thing. I mean, it can be being right, it can be getting your way, it can be having to defend yourself, it can be, what do you mean I did that? Sensitivity. I mean, it's all there. It's not in the coach, it's there in the family
Mm. And so just seeing it is useful.
for them to see it
Yeah.
without the therapist seeing all of it, for the therapist to point the way
Hmm.
and for them to start seeing it.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense to me. Are you enjoying doing premarital counseling?
I always have. I haven't taken new clients in a number of years now. I see the just as many as I want to. These are long-term people that, or I see. But I always say yes to the couples getting married. I think it's a really important time, and I think people will engage that diagram. I just see them twice, and then over time they might come back. Remember that thing we talked about with me, her, and my mother? Well, it's kind of active. And they might come in for a meeting or two and look at the diagram again and go their merry way. It doesn't mean they engage Bowen theory right away, but they get
Hmm.
a broader view.
Yeah. I think it's such a great uh, premarital tools to show that each person's family of origin and what they might be up against in this marriage with each other based on that, you know.
What do you see? Do you see couples who are thinking of getting married or
Uh,
into?
I don't have any right now. Um, I did see one once, and we fa we kind of did something similar. I was just asking questions about how their family of origin works and what they thought they might be bringing to the table. That might be a challenge.
It's an interesting place for students who are graduating too, with these ideas to go to as a referral source to clergy, because clergy
Mm,
are needing help a lot of times with premarital preparation. They don't want to do it all. Others do want to do it all, but they're happy to have therapists in the community that will uh, say, "Yeah, I'll see them," and that's two full sessions that the
yeah.
minister doesn't have to have the time to do. And I think it's a really ripe time. And the couple's moving toward the marriage, so that's not going to change. But to see the systems coming together and help them plan that, what are the obstacles while they're engaged, etc., can be very useful to people, I think.
A little more aware, a little more intentional makes a big difference.
That's right.
Um, Kathleen, I have tons of questions for you, but was there something that you wanted to touch on that we didn't get to yet?
I think the only clinical family pattern that I think is important for people to engage is the use of humor, um,
Mm,
to see how it works in their family, to see when it goes off the rails at somebody else's expense. When is it fun? When is it life-giving? When is it an energy buster? When is it distance? Um, when is it at the expense of another, as I just mentioned? Just to understand the patterns, because I think they can creep into the clinical setting. The idea that humor is a good idea, I think that's dangerous. Um,
mm,
isn't always a good idea. So, I mean, I'm always gauging because I know I used to have on my website, it's probably still there. If you're looking for a serious consultant, I'm not the right one. I mean, but I really believe that. I believe that. I'm just not a real serious person, and so I'm not for everybody, believe me. And some people who are quite serious they would find me offensive. They would find
mm,
um because it's just not how they live their life or it's not their style. So I'm always
mm,
assessing because I know how I have to regulate. That is one of the patterns I have to regulate. If a fun person and a serious person walk in as a couple, I'm on high alert to engage with that serious person
mm,
and not to start joking around with this fun person. I mean, because like sun coming up in the morning, I'll just go over here and start having a good time. Oh my God, so disrespectful. So it can be
mhm,
very disrespectful if it's not examined. Um,
mm.
if it is an automatic. In my family, it's an automatic. You come to my family, oh, people are having a good time.
We're laughing, yeah.
But are they talking necessarily about what's under the river? Maybe later on. So it's the way that many, many things get managed. Um, it's very interesting to watch. Even when people are sick or have a medical problem, it's a great resource. They can be joking around about something quite serious, but it's how they get through. But that doesn't mean that would work in the clinical setting
Mm,
at all. So know your family and then know when you're outside the family that the same patterns can be quite offensive.
mm,
And I think the last thing I would say, um, the disrespect can come in if somebody brings someone into the family that's serious. Immediate reaction of the family can be, oof, hard to talk to that one. I mean, think about that. Think about that.
they're
And
not part of the crew.
yeah, not automatically like, yeah. So it can be, I remember when I married my husband, he was this wonderful guy, and he's quiet. And it has been so good for me I've learned so many things from my husband. We've been together 40 years now. And, but when I brought him into the family, oh, Kathleen, he's very quiet. Are you sure? Are you sure about that? He's like quiet. And I would say, yeah, that works for me. All the more room for me to talk, I would say over to my family that was, and that would calm people down. But the fact that he was quiet was fascinating, Guillermo. This was kind of problematic because
Mm.
people didn't quite know what to do with him. And now he's like the favorite. I'm like, wow, you're welcome.
Uh, I can relate to that. My wife has helps me be more thoughtful,
Ah,
because she's so good at taking her time and considering what she's going to say, and being uh, uh, wise in her responses. And me, sometimes I want to make people happy by talking fast and giving them an answer,
yeah, no filter, Guillermo.
Yeah. So it's wonderful to be with. Um,
Yeah, it is. It is.
yeah, you know. That's the good part of reciprocity, can be really helpful.
You bet. You bet.
Kathleen, I got a question for you. Now that you're not 14 anymore, asking the the school, who was it? The school supervisor, or the school principal. How do you know if you have a vocation,
A religious vocation.
or any vocation? You know.
Well, I think that having a vocation I'm Catholic, and I think that work has been a vocation for me.
Hmm.
The way life includes volunteer work. People in my family will say, they won't say, they won't say, are you volunteering? They'll say, where are you volunteering?
Mm. It's a part of you.
Yep. And so
Mm.
vocation as a way of life was really part of the water, that you're living out your vocation in whatever you're doing, whether it's in
I
your marriage,
like that.
as a parent, with your grandchildren, with in your work. Um, I would say it's a guiding principle, really.
Mm. I like that, thinking of it as a way of life. The principles you're living out, and uh, that can show up in a lot of different ways.
What do you think it means for people?
Um, I tend to think about it in a similar way. Somebody asked, I think it was a student asked me the other day, something about, has has training been do you has training impacted the way you see the world, or something, some question like that. And I was like, I don't know if I can separate them. Uh, you know, I
Yeah.
think for me, working with people, talking to people like this, thinking about these ideas about family, it's become part of a way of life.
Mhm.
Uh,
I think too that people with religious vocations who come our way, I find it very life-giving because they work with so many people. So if you're
mhm.
coaching someone who is a clergy person, you know, these ideas that they can take out to their congregations as in a broad, expansive way. Um, it's an idea of, talking to people who have religious vocations can also be part of one's own vocation is
Yeah.
um, the way it gets spread out.
Mm, mm, yeah. Have you did you grow up in well, I think from what you were telling me, you grew up in Catholicism. Has it always been a part of your life, or
It's always been a part of my life, and including that first coach that I mentioned in Bowen Theory was a Catholic nun was
Teresa, right?
very key because she was trained in the theory. She had a love for the church. I wanted to stay in the Catholic Church. I didn't want to
Mm,
cut off from the church. I didn't believe in everything the Catholic Church was teaching. And what was I to do? how was I to sort out through the process of differentiation? What does it mean to go a different path on an issue in a church that I loved? And
Great
so
question.
the combination was great because kind of like if you have a different way of thinking in your family and or in your church, she was very instrumental in my thinking through what does it mean to remain a Catholic, um,
Mm.
and to have this theory. And both informed the other. People say to me all the time, "You're still Catholic?" I'm like, "Yeah. Why would I leave this?" Oh, even when I was single till I was 35, I got married. My friends would say, "What are you doing? Why aren't you married? You're waiting for some Irish Catholic guy that'll laugh with you and go to church." I remember thinking that's kind of what I'm waiting for.
Sounds good.
So, yes, it has become, and it is part of my rudder. Daily
Mm,
prayer life is part of my rudder. And I did what's called the Ignatian spiritual exercises about 10 years ago. And
mm,
it's a beautiful way of proceeding. It lasts a year, and you have to dedicate 45 minutes a day to prayer. And I thought, I can't do this. And I need to do this, but I can't do this. And I signed up. And this priest, he was at Georgetown, a Jesuit, and he said, if you can wait till September, I can start with you then. You meet every week. And then I broke my leg. I signed up, and then my dog actually broke my leg. And I was on crutches for 4 months. Got rid of the crutches, started the exercises. And the fact that I could go get my coffee and sit down for 45 minutes was nothing. Nothing. It was like the greatest preparation for this. And what it does, it instills a habit of seeing God in all things. Like, where did I see
mm,
God and where did I miss God today? So they have this, it's called the examine. And it's not like an examination of conscience or sin. It's you stop midday or at some point in the day and say, okay, what's happened now since from the time I got up to now? Who did I encounter? What did I see? What did I miss? Where was God nudging? Did I pay attention? Was I too busy? It's like a walking way of staying intentional
mhm,
and slowing down, which we all know for me is important. Slowing down and centering.
mm,
So, yeah, it's at the heart of how I see the world and how I access God throughout the day.
mm. That's beautiful, Kathleen. I've been lately. I've been reading this Catholic priest Martin Laird. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
No.
He's got 3 books on Christian contemplation. And I found him actually through Eric Thompson, if you know, in Vermont,
Yep.
who does meditation. He's like, "Hey, I think you might like this." So I read the first book, and then I got the other two, and it's very. I mean, it talks about God as like the ground of being, that's ever present, always there, and how are you encountering it? How do you just realize that it's there? You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. There's a podcast called The Spiritual Life that Father Jim Martin does. And he interviewed Pete Buttigieg and Stephen Colbert, and he did one the other day on spiritual direction. And it's quite good. It's new, I would say. It's new
Mm,
this year, but a lot of these Jesuit ideas are in there about all is gift, no matter what happens in our lives. How is it used as a gift to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing that might come our way?
mm. Yeah, an unfolding, a continual unfolding. Uh,
I mean, I would say that the chapter I described today, with when my brother and mother both died, in the run, was such a gift in so many ways to how we all functioned. Learning early on, wait a minute, life is short, and
yeah.
we don't know how many years we're going to get. And aren't we lucky that we have this many? But
Mm,
I learned, as a young girl, this there's no guarantee. So I think that's also where a prayer life comes in, a belief. in the future, how to live your days that you have, your
Mm.
precious days.
I love that. Uh, I'm a fan of trying to see the beauty in every moment. I think,
I'll tell you one
uh,
last thing, because I hear you ask the question, what do you hope for in the times we're in now?
yeah.
I was thinking that when my father died, he was a giant of a man, a wonderful man. And when he died, he was 80, and he died, and we were going to his funeral, and I was in charge of picking one of the readings. So I went to bed and I had this dream, and in the dream it said Jeremiah. And I woke up and thought, Jeremiah? I don't know who Jeremiah who Jeremiah is. And I was anxious. I was getting on a plane to fly to this funeral and pick this reading. So I went to my Bible and I ripped out, let's talk about anxiety. I ripped out the chapter on Jeremiah. Jeremiah, ripped it out of my Bible and put it in my purse, in my bag. And then I picked this reading out of Jeremiah. And it's all about hope. So I'd like to read it to you. It's short. It's very
Please,
short,
please. I would love that.
but it's been a little touchstone. He died, 25 years ago. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for your welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. Simple,
Mm,
very simple. And now in the world that we're in now, I use this a lot just to stay hopeful. We don't know what's coming, but it can be good things as well as all the fears we're in now.
I love it, Kathleen. I couldn't think of a better way to end. Thank you so much for being here.
Now I'm going to miss you. What am I going to do?
Ah, call me.
I'm going to send you a picture of me as a nun. That's what I'm going to do.
Oh, please, please do.
Thank you, Guillermo. Thank you very much. This unfolded. I thought, ooh, that's a long time, but it does unfold. So thank you.
You got it. Thank you, Kathleen.